checking on the chickens, and it's just so cold out here today. You know what? Let's go inside and make some bread. So now that we're back inside, I like to do warm activities on cold days. So we are going to make some bread. One of my favorite sandwich bread recipes is a milk bread recipe. So I'm going to leave all the ingredients in the caption, and we're going to go step by step, and we're going to make 2 loaves of good sandwich bread. Follow along, then you try it. So I'm actually going to be making a double recipe, but for a single loaf, you would need 1 1/4 cup of warm milk and 3 tablespoons of melted butter. Now you can put the butter inside the milk and pop it in the microwave it for about 30 seconds each time. It usually will take about 1.5 minutes to get it nice and warm. You don't want it too hot because then it'll destroy your yeast. Now the butter does not have to be melted all the way. You can still have a little couple pieces in there, but then we're going to add our sugar and we're going to add our yeast. We're going to use 1 tablespoon of sugar and we're going to use 1 teaspoon of sugar and 2 teaspoons of yeast. Now we all know we got to let the yeast bloom, so we're going to do that. We're going to sit that aside, and while we sit that aside, we're going to go ahead and measure out our dry ingredients, which is just 3 cups of flour and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. You're just going to put that in a bowl, mix that together, and then once your yeast is bloomed, then you're going to just go ahead and mix all those ingredients together. I prefer to make 2 loaves at a time. It just makes everything so much easier, and I don't have to keep worrying about if I have to make bread because my kids go through it. So I would suggest that you use the double recipe. I'm going to put both the single and the double in the caption so you'll have both, but I suggest you use the double recipe. Once your flour and salt is whisked together, go ahead and start adding your wet ingredients. Now you can do this in like a stand mixer, KitchenAid, blah blah blah. I don't have one of those, so I pretty much do all my bread making by hand. Doesn't really bother me. I do want a stand mixer, but until then, we're still going to eat bread. So I'm just going to pour that in a little bit at a time. Going to use my Danish dough whisk at first. And then you're just going to have to get in there with your hands to make sure it's done right. And I have no problem with doing that either. Get in there, mix it up real good until there's no like visible flour. Because I don't have a stand mixer, sometimes I just take it out the bowl and just put it together on my silicone mat instead of trying to do it in the bowl. I do it both ways, but this time I'm going to just drop it all on the mat once most of the flour is incorporated, and I'm just going to knead it a little bit. So all the flour is wet, and I'm going to put it like in a little ball. Doesn't have to be perfect, and we're just going to sit that to the side. For me, making bread at home is so fulfilling. I know that sounds weird, but just to know that you can take a couple things you have in the house, throw them together, and you can go ahead and make you a sandwich afterwards or some toast or whatever. It's like the best feeling in the world, especially when it's warm and it comes right out the oven, even though you're not supposed to cut it in. But I do it anyway, at least for 1 loaf, because I want to taste it as soon as it's done. So right here is when I start getting into it with my hands. And as you can see, it still looks dry because all the moisture isn't mixed in there yet. So I'm going to go ahead and dump it on the silicone mat and do it that way. As you can see here, the dough is coming together. So now I'm just going to kind of shape it into a little ball, and then I'm going to stick it back in the bowl, and we're going to cover that. I use saran wrap, and then I also use a towel. Now you don't have to use saran wrap. You can use like a shower cap, or you can even use just a damp towel. But it's wintertime, and I just want to make sure my dough rises. So I kind of do a double layer. So I put the saran wrap on first, and then I put a little kitchen towel on top of it. So here you can see my ball. My hands are a little sticky, but it's okay. We're going to put that away, and we're going to let this rest until it doubles in size. You want it to be doubled, okay? Not super small, not a little bit more. You want it to actually be double. You want that yeast to actually get in there and work, okay? Once you start making this bread, you're going to love it. It's so quick and so easy to do. Of course, you're going to have to wait for it to rest and all that. But other than that, it's really quick to do. So now that my dough is doubled, I'm going to go ahead, because I didn't use a stand mixer, I'm going to knead it just a little bit more. If you use a stand mixer, you may not have to knead it, but I'm going to definitely knead it a little bit more. Only for like a couple minutes, like 3 to 5 minutes. Nothing too fancy and nothing too long, because I don't want anything to happen to my dough. Now, you don't have to sprinkle flour on it. I did this time. I don't even remember if I usually do or don't, but I did this time to be safe. But usually you can just work with it, especially if you have a silicone mat and it holds up pretty good. It's not too sticky, but I did add a little bit of flour on there just to knead it, to get it all worked together. Again, this is for 2 loaves, so we're going to have to split this dough in half. I try to get it to a uniform shape and then split it in half. You can weigh it and measure it and all that good stuff. I'm not going to do all that. It's some bread that my kids are going to eat, and we're going to enjoy it. I don't really care if the loaves are not exactly the same size. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I'm just going to put it into its shape, and then I'm going to stick it into my pans. Now, I have Pullman pans, which I absolutely love, but as you'll see later on in the video, I think something is going wrong with them. I might have to purchase some more, because it gave me a black coating on the top, which it has never done ever before. So now we're going to put these in the Pullman pan. You don't have to use a Pullman pan. You can use a regular loaf pan, or you can stick it back in another bowl to rise again, but I would prefer to put it in the dish that I'm actually going to use. So I spray them down with a nonstick spray, and then I let them rest inside the pan covered. Make sure it's covered, and you want that dough to rise for about 35 minutes. This was halfway through. That's about 20 minutes. So I'm going to let it go some more, and then we have this. This is 30 minutes. See how it's almost all the way to the top? That's what we want. So you want to bake them at 350 for about 35 minutes. Okay, you see what I was talking about with the top of my bread? Like, what is that? But anyway, we're still going to eat it. I don't care. But look at that crumb. That is like the perfect soft sandwich bread. Now you're going to let it cool. I didn't let this one cool. The other one will cool completely because I wanted to taste it, and it was delicious. Okay, nice, soft, the perfect crumb for sandwiches. So this is my go-to bread now. It's the milk bread sandwich bread. I absolutely love it. You can store it. I use little baggies to store it. You can freeze it if you want. But just look at it. Isn't it so beautiful? Look at it. It's like almost perfect, except for whatever's at the top. But let me know if you try this bread out. It's a real simple recipe, really easy to do, doesn't take that much time at all, and I hope you enjoy it.